Hello, I'm Matt and welcome to Badger Workshop. I wanted to build a bed frame. You can buy these pretty cheaply, so I wanted to try and build it as cheaply as possible. So I'm going to use some CLS construction timber. I already had a king size mattress, so I could use this to measure and get the dimensions of what the frame needed to be. First, I'm going to make the 4 legs, and I'm going to use some 4x2s for that. I can mark out how long everything needs to be, set up some stops, and then get them cut down to length on the miter saw. I want the legs to be square, so I'm going to glue 2 of these bits together for each of the legs. I get some PVA applied, spread on, 2 bits put together and clamped up, and then I can leave them to dry. CLS has rounded off corners, so when you glue 2 bits together you get a line down the centre. I didn't really want this, so I planed down 2 surfaces, then I reconfigured the machine as a thicknesser. Then I could put the wood through the machine, cleaning up the other 2 sides and making them square. Normally I trim the ends flush using the miter saw, but this timber's too thick for that, so I'm going to use the table saw and the miter gauge. Now I need to cut the pieces to join the header and the footer of the bed together. For the foot of the bed and for the lower part of the headboard I'm going to use some 6x2, so I get a couple of bits cut down, and then for the top bit of the headboard I'm going to use some 4x2, so I get that cut to the same length as well. I'm going to join this all together using dowels, and because I've got one I'm going to use my Triton dowel joiner. But a jig and a drill would work just as well, just take a little longer. With the holes drilled, I've managed to clear just enough space to lay this out. I get some glue applied to the holes, get the dowels tapped into place, and then I can start getting the joints pulled together. Unfortunately, I didn't have any clamps long enough to pull this all together, but I had some of these clamping blocks I made a couple of years ago. I got some of those clamped into place, and then I could get the clamps on them to pull the joints tight. With the frame for the head of the bed done, I could then do exactly the same with the foot. The next day the glue's dried and I've got the clamps off, and I want to put some battens along this back. This will give me something to butt a headboard up against later on. I take a bit of 4x2 and cut it down into strips, and then I can cut those bits square. These strips can now get glued and nailed along the back edge of this to create a frame. So for the sides of the bed I'm just going to use some 4x2, So I get that measured out to the length I need and then get a couple of bits cut down on the miter saw. These side pieces need a ledge for the slats of the bed to sit on, so out of some more CLS I cut down a couple of square lengths. I can now get some glue applied to these and glue them to the bottom edge of these side pieces. They don't go the full length because I need some room to be able to get some brackets on later. Then, as these are going to be on the inside of the bed, I can just secure them with some screws. I give all the bits of sand down and I try and give a bit of a chamfer to the bottom of the legs. Now you might expect me to finish this with Danish oil, but I'm getting a bit low on it, so I'm trying to use up some finishes I just had knocking around the garage, and I've got some water-based varnish, so I'm going to use that. I quite like it as it doesn't change the colour of the wood much. Now I can take it up to the room it needs to live in, because I don't have enough room to actually get it put together and finish it in the workshop. The bed's going to need a support down the centre for the battens to fit on, and I've got some of these metal hangers that are the right size for a 3x2 to sit in, so I get one secured at the centre of either end of the bed. I've got a 3x2 that I've cut down to the same length as the sides, and that can be put into place. I got some of these brackets off Amazon, and they had some bad reviews, and you'll see why later. These will allow me to take the bed apart in the future if I want to move. So this one style of plate gets attached to all 4 legs, and then a couple of these little bolts get threaded on. On the sides go these hooked pieces. Now I had an experiment at first and I saw what the bad reviews were about. They don't sit nicely unless you add a little shim underneath. That added and them installed on either end, then I can get the sides hooked on into place. So here you can see the problem with the bracket. If you didn't have the shim, the side piece would hit the bracket on the leg and it wouldn't go up against the leg, there'd be a couple of mil gap. Seems to be a bit of a design flaw, but that simple little fix makes them work. There'll be a link down below to these on my tool page as they are cheaper than some of the other options. All these bolts can now be done up and everything gets pulled nice and tight. As these brackets have holes in, I thought I might as well whack some screws in and lock this centre support into place. Now the bed needs some slats. You can buy ready-made slats and they're probably better than what I'm going to do, but they're more expensive obviously. So I'm just going to cut down to length some 3x2 and then I'm going to get 3 slats out of each length. Now this isn't an ideal material because you can see the knots in it and they're weak points, and I actually broke a couple of slats while doing this. I gave all the slats a sand down as I don't want any rough edges catching on the mattress. Then I can take them all inside and start getting them put into place. As I need to attach them right at the end, I drill a pilot hole so I don't split the wood, and then I can get them screwed down into place. I use a scrap of 4x2 as my spacer and just work my way up, getting these attached at both ends and in the middle. For this bed I needed 20 slats in total. To be extra safe, I'm just going to put a little leg in the centre. So I've cut a bit of 3x2 down, get that put in place, and then I can drive a couple of screws through the top into it, securing it. Now I can start work on the headboard. So I measure how big the opening is, and I've got some 9mm ply that's going to fit in there. I use my DIY track saw to get a piece cut down to the size I needed. I'm going to go for a padded headboard as I like a bit of luxury. I lay down some wadding, some foam and then I can get the ply put on top. I can then work my way round, pulling the wadding tight and getting it secured with some staples. I can then lay out some fabric I've got, put that bit of wadding and ply on top, pull the fabric tight and get it stapled on it in the same way. I've got some little tiny L brackets that I'm just going to put round on this frame. I probably could have skipped the frame and just used these brackets, but this will give a bit more support. The headboard now just goes into place, and I get some screws in from the back to hold it there. And that's it all done. It's a pretty cheap bed, but I quite like the nice chunky look it's got. Thanks for watching, thanks to my Patreons, and good night all.